My name is Abiodun Margaret Oyedele, and this is my sprint project called LensFair. LensFair is an online learning platform built with a Spring Boot REST API backend, a separate Java CLI application, the client, that is the front end. The goal of this script was to, one, design a relational database model, two, expose a REST API using all HTTP verb, get, put, delete, and post. Three, build a CLI that consumes four specific endpoints. Four, implement proper testing and implement CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment. Then the last one, use separate repositories with GitHub workflow. I'll be walking you through the backend architecture, the relationship between the layered categories, the endpoints, the CLI consuming the endpoints, testing, and GitHub workflow. On the back end, I structured the project using a layered architecture, category, course, instructor, and students. The reports layer is where all the endpoints that the front end consumes lives. And each of these layered architecture has an entity, it has a controller, it has a repository, and it has a service where all the logic for each entity lives. The relationships on LensFair, one category can have many courses. Many courses can belong to one category. Many courses can be taught by one instructor. Then a many-to-many relationship occurs between students and course. A course can have many students enrolled, and a student can enroll in many courses. And as well, one instructor can teach many courses. I used all HTTP verbs for LensFair: get, put, delete, and post. And I will be illustrating this on Postman. To illustrate this on Postman, I'll be running the application so that I can get my Postman connected to it. And now, as you can see, the application is being run. It's connected to MySQL database. Okay. So here at Postman, I'll be starting with categories, and I'll start with a post request to this category. So prior to this, I have some data already in the database. So I'll be sending a post request with fundamentals of HTML, CSS, the key being name. And getting this response means that the post request was created. I can as well do a put request with the ID of 7, because fundamentals of HTML and CSS as ID of 7. I can probably call this fundamental, and this also gives us a response. So I'll be moving on to instructors layer. Instructor layer. So in all my application in general, I have validations. For the instructor, there must be a unique email. For instance, since I have this already in the database, I don't expect it. I don't expect it to be created. I expect it to send an error message. So like you see, we get an error message, instructor email already exists. So I'll just be changing this to probably TT Boyle, TT.boyle to create a new instructor. I'll be sending a post request, and now we have a new instructor with first name TT, last name Boyle, email, and an auto-generated ID. I'll also be creating a post request to courses. For courses require a title, code, category ID, and instructor. The previous category we created had an ID of 7, so I'll be changing this to 7. Then instructor has an ID of 5, I'll be changing this to 5. Since that's HTML, CSS fundamentals, I'll probably just call this HTML with HT101. Sending a post request to these courses. Now I can see that title and code is there. Then my category is populated. Same with the instructor name, populated. In my code, I had to use an at JSON. At JSON, because when I first did this, I was getting a recursive response. But then due to my research, I saw at JSON, which helps to give me the real response that I need to stop the recursiveness. I'll be moving down to student and I'll be creating a new student. I have Margaret Purple already as a student. So the unique constraint here is both first name and last name must not be the same. For instance, if I send a post request to this, I have it's students with first name and last name already exist. So I'll just be changing this to I'll be changing this to mag. I'll be changing this to mag yellow and sending a post request to students. And now we'll see mag yellow has been created with an ID of 5. And note this, the courses is null. So now I want to enroll. I have an endpoint where I can enroll Margaret to courses. So I'll be enrolling Margaret to courses. So I will need a student ID, which is 5. So I'll be enrolling Margaret to the other course which we created, the course that has ID of 4. And this is the endpoint. If I send a post request to this, now we'll see that Margaret has a course attached to her name and the course instructor and the category ID of the course. I'll also be enrolling Michael to a previously created Mag to a previously created course of ID 3. And now we see Mag has 2 courses listed under her name. JavaScript with course code JS101 and HTML with course code HT101. I can as well unenroll Mag from any of these courses. Probably I'm enrolling her from course 3, and that uses an HTTP verb of delete. And if I send that along, I can the other one added, the other course has been removed from the courses of Margaret. My front end consumes 4 API endpoints from the backend, and that is where that's why I put all the logic of that inside the report layer architecture. The four endpoints are categories by courses by categories, courses by students, instructors by courses, instructors by students. So I'll be demonstrating that as well. So the first one, I'll start with courses by categories, and they are all get HTTP verb. So these are all the courses based on category in the database. I also have courses by students, courses by students. So this will also give the list of courses per each student. Then I also have instructors by courses, instructors by courses. This as well will give a list of all the courses per instructor. Then I have instructors by students. This as well gives all the instructors per students based on the relationship that I have on the back end. So I also added proper validations, for instance, all across the website, both at the front end and the back end. For instance, I added a validation such that if the student, like I initially mentioned, if a student first name and last name already exist in the database, then an error message is sent to the user. Same as this, if the student that needs to be updated does not exist, then it also sends a student not found error message. I also at the course layer, I made sure that the code the code of each course is the unique constraint for the course so that we don't have multiple courses with the same code. Here is my front end client. My client in the app config, it contains the base URL. The API client helps to make the GET requests. These are the logics to make the GET requests. Then my model contains each of the DTOs, that's the transfer and data transfer objects of each of the endpoints. For instance, courses by category, courses by student, instructor by student, instructors by course. Then this simple course is the data at which this list of courses in courses by category uses. The same with the instructors by course and instructors by student. It uses the simple instructor DTO. The simple instructor DTO have variables to match up the backend variables like the instructor ID, first name, last name, email, then a default constructor, a parameterized constructor, then getters and setters, and a toString method that provides a string representation of the instructor object. This is the same logic that is also at the simple course. It has the variables, instance variables, getters and setters, then a toString method. The report service is where the report service is the service that actually fetches the report data from the API. Like for instance, the base URL is concatenated with the slash courses by category. Same with the remaining three endpoints. My console renderer helps with printing each of the data received from the back end, and main helps to the main class provides a console-based menu for viewing each of those reports. So I'll be running this to demonstrate each of these endpoints and their values that were received from the backend. So once this is being run, you get a report menu. Then based on what you want to do, you follow the number prompts. Choose any of the numbers above. So for courses by category, I'll be picking number 1, and this will list out all the courses per category in the DB. Then courses by students, this will also list out all the courses per student. For instance, we created Magiello, and Magiello had HT101 course code, then HTML course title. Then I'll be picking option 3. Option 3, this lists out all the instructors per courses, instructor email, instructor title. I kept this in a tabular form. Then for option 4, this lists out instructors by students. So this is a student that has 2 instructors, a student that has 1 instructor, Magiello has 1 instructor. And we can put in option 0 to exit the application. So I also did a couple of tests for this application. I did tests for report service test. I also did tests for console renderer. For the report service test, the report service test makes use of a mock API so that I can test the API calls and mock the endpoints. So before each test is being run, there is a setup, and that is to create a new object of report service and passing the API client mock objects, the object mapper, and the base URL for proper testing. So I did a couple of tests. At this point, I tested the endpoint of courses by categories, made sure that the sizes gotten are equal, make sure that category name is equal, size is equal, the first name gotten is equal. I also tested get courses by category, make sure it handles empty courses. I tested get courses by students, tested, make sure it handles empty courses, tested the endpoint, make sure it passes variables correctly, tested null cases of get courses by students. I did a lot of tests on all this as well. I also tested the get instructor by courses. I did a lot of tests in these ones as well. Make sure that the endpoint returns the values it should get. Then I also tested get instructors by students. Make sure it passes the instructor list as expected. And I also make sure that when a non-JSON value is sent, it contains a message failed to pass JSON. The console renderer, I did not need to use the mock because I did not make use of any API endpoint here, so I did not need to use the mock at this point. So I did a before each, that is set up the console renderer instances, make sure that it sets out an output and a tear down so that it does not eat up space for each of the tests that I was working on. So I tested the print courses by category, make sure that no data is printed when it's null, tested when it prints no data when it's empty, make sure I tested it prints categories and courses appropriately. I also tested that it prints no courses message when courses are null. So I did a couple of tests here, and I make sure that every test ran without any failure. So here is a demo to show that every test is running. So these are 16 tests passed, and each of these tests contains multiple tests in it. So it's more than 16, but I just grouped them. Then the report service as well, make sure that everything ran without any issues. And here I have 7 tests passed. So all my tests are running appropriately. For GitHub workflow, I created a project for both the front end. This is the front end, the CLI, and the back end. This is for the back end, CLI API. And I make sure that I created columns for to do, in progress, in review, continuous integration. As expected, all this has been completed, and I have just the video to work on. So I'll just be putting this in progress, same as the front end. I'll be putting the client in progress. I also made sure that I created a branch protection rule for the main, such that when a pull request is being sent, there will be no margin except all tests has been run and all checks has been done. I also worked on Java docs, make sure that all my method, all my functions, all my classes, they have Java doc comments. And I created a GitHub page such that it can give me a URL where anyone I give this URL can have access to this Java documentation. I also worked on Swagger to make sure that all my endpoints are properly tested accurately. So all my endpoints are properly tested. Like, you can use the Swagger to create all my endpoint and test it without moving back and forth with Postman. So I also created Swagger for all my endpoints at the back end, and all the ones the front end is also consuming. I also created a /swagger path in my application or property so that it can be easy to get the Swagger documentation. So once this is running on your local machine on 8080 and you put /swagger, you can get the Swagger documentation. Okay. Some of the challenges I faced: one, managing the bidirectional relationships. I had issues with managing the bidirectional relationships, like the many to one, one to many, many to many, but I was able to overcome that. Then also, I had issues with the JSON recursion. That was where I used the @JSON to make sure, after my research, to make sure that I don't get those recursive responses back. And also, I had issues with setting up the workflow at the beginning, but I was able to overcome that as well. And I also had to read on GitHub projects to be able to work on the GitHub project, like the create the agile methodology for the GitHub work project. Improvement and future work: one, to add authentication; two, add pagination; add more integration tests, definitely from new services like authentication that will be created, and possibly to have a web front end instead of CLI, to have a proper front end instead of CLI. So in summary, LensFair demonstrates REST API design, relational modeling with MySQL, HTTP communication with the HTTP verbs, clean CLI architecture, well layered, unit testing with mocking, and CI/CD workflow. Thank you for